Hi and welcome to our Ladybird artist trading card tutorial. So I have my colour pencils here and I'll just quickly show you what I have. So I've gone for a mixture of brands. Let me just get them together. So we have Caran d'Ache Luminance, nice and sort of creamy colour pencils. Then there's Caran d'Ache Pablos. Absolutely love using these, really lovely pencils. And then we have a Derwent Drawing, really thick core, very creamy. There's Polychromos pencils, so they're quite sort of hard but very good for detail. And there's Derwent Lightfast, again a really lovely pencil to draw with. And Prismacolor Premier. Okay, so what we're going to start doing first is we're going to take our Pablo Red and we're going to sort of block in the main foundation colours. So over here just very lightly, because the surface is not going to have too much tooth on it. So at the moment it's just purely sort of just blocking in those colours, and then just to sort of remember you've got the white area here. I'm just going to go over that way for that, because this looks a bit orangey coming over there, and again it's quite orange in there as well. And then just coming around here. Just little round circular movements with the pencil once you've got the edge marked out. This helps with the blending of the colour pencils. And of course this isn't kind of like a straight line along here, so again we're going to make it just a bit rounder. And then you'll also notice that there we need to sort of draw in a darker spot there. Let me just zoom in for you so you can see it a bit better. So what we've done with this is, rather than just sort of transfer our line art to make it sort of quicker and, you know, easier to do, we've just copied it straight onto our sketchbook paper. Just a little bit there. And I'm going to go in with the Luminance Dark Cadmium Orange. Very, very lightly. We're going to be adding layers on top of this. And just around here as well. Okay, and I'm going to add the luminance flame in there, because it's, you know, it's darker. And I'm going to use the Pablo salmon pink. Just want to sharpen that a bit. I don't usually tend to sharpen my pencils like on the first layer, but because this is a small area, then, you know, I want a sort of a finer point so that I can add, you know, the bits in. So we need to leave a little space around here. And there you go, just around that area. So we just want to make this like a pinky colour. Still very, very light, and still around circular movement with our pencil. And then we want to do the same here as well. So that's a darker part around there. So with the black, we're going to make up the darker spots darker, so not the one that's going to go there and not the ones that's going to go there. So it's going to be this one, the one that's in there, so it's going to be like just a little line. Then that one, and finally that one. Then we're going to go on all the other areas that's in black. So just to sort these legs out first of all. So we've got that leg there. So it's kind of like gripping that blade of grass there. And then there's a little bit there. And then I'm going to, so around here it's dark. So that kind of like separates the shell to the head area. So this part is going to be darker. And then we've got that part there. So there's a little white circle there. So we've got that area, that is the darker part. Just going to go over the top of this part. Just to separate that a bit. And we'll go over this part in a minute. I'm going to use the dark indigo for that. So I'm going to use that salmon pink around here for the moment, just so because I want them to stand out a bit. just conscious of the fact that I don't want to block out two eyes here. So we've got one there, and there's going to be one there as well, very small. Okay, and we're going to use the Pablo dark indigo. So if you don't, like I say, if you don't have like any of these pencils, even the ones on the conversion chart, just go with the nearest that you've got in your pencil set. Okay, so just going in and doing this spot there, because this would normally be light, but be like a black, but because of the sun being on it, or the light being on it, it's made the black a bit lighter. And then we're gonna draw in the spot there. Okay, so then we're going to work on this part here. So it's very, although it's dark, it's a lot lighter than the black that we've used. So it's going to sort of stand out. And at the moment we're just sort of blocking in our first layer of colour. So that bit there is going to be white. So we don't need to go over with any colour at all. And then coming down here, okay, so that's our first layer done. So we're going to go back in and start adding our top layer. So this is the scarlet, so just use the red that you've got in your pencil packs. So I'm going to use a bit of scarlet in there because it's inside the shell, and around here it's darker. So just go careful if you're going over areas that where we've used black, because you don't want to make the drawing itself dark. We're just building up the red layer at the moment. So still the same pressure. We're not pressing heavily for this. It's just so that we can build up the layers and make the colours more vibrant. Let's just see if I can lower that lighting down. Okay. Because the colours that I've got in front of me is not actually what is appearing on the screen. It's because there's the light shining on it. But once we've finished, I'll hold the finished card up, and then you'll be able to see it. And I'll also be posting the finished product, you know, in the community. Just a little sort of glance of the red there. And then I'm going to use the dark cadmium orange. So this will be one of your darker oranges in your packs. Because where the light's on it, it's looking a bit more on the orange side of things. So what we're doing, again, light to medium pressure, and we're just sort of lightly going over the layers each time so that we can sort of get rid of the tooth of the paper. And then over here, round circular movements there, so that we can sort of, you know, blend it seamlessly and there's no streaks. It's kind of like around the side bits that you've got, you know, the more orangey part there. Just gonna add a bit more of the red around there. Okay, and I'm going to go in with the Derwent Drawing Ash Rose. So if you don't have one of these, then it's going to be one of your, it looks like a lilac colour, so it's going to be like a light purpley pink, but you know, just go with whatever you've got that is the most similar shade. We're just going in there, and then just round circular movements there. Excuse me. These pencils are just so rich and creamy, really lovely to use. So all of these brands that I'm using, they can all be bought individually if you sort of choose to purchase them, but you don't need them, you can just use what you've got. It's a tutorial that's based on teaching you the values rather than buying sort of extra equipment. So I'm just going to go in with the red again. Actually want to make that a bit redder. And just need to sort of fill that tooth in there a bit. Just going to add a slight sort of cover of red along there. And just a bit more along there. So you've got your lightest area of the pink there, and I'm just going to lightly go over that with red along here. And don't draw in ash pink, sorry, ash rose. Just go in there a bit as well. And the light fast flame, so that's another sort of deep orange for you. And just the red, because we want to see a difference. And then just going to add a bit of the pink on this rim, sort of edge of the shell. Right, so I've got the polychromos white. Just want to sort of make sure that's as light as it can be. Try not to go into any of the colours that we've added, because you'll just bring it in and it won't look as white anymore. Okay, so I'm just going to try and add some highlight into there. And along there, just to make it slightly lighter. So I'm going to take the black, because you want to sort of show a slight separation on the wings, like that. And then we'll just continue, just to sort of bring our layers in. I just want to make sure that you can sort of see the head and the body sort of separated. So we're okay there with that. And now the dark indigo. So we just want to sort of bring this sort of colour up. And this would normally be black as well, but because of the light that's shining on it, it's slightly lighter. and just sort of just keep referring back to the reference photo each time. So it's a bit lighter, that area. Let's go over that bit more. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on the bits of grass, and then once we've done those, then we can start adding a background. Let's just put the power on in my laptop. Sorry about this. Where's that gone? There it is. Right. So I'm going to start with our greens. I'm going to do a base. We're going to do this part first. So I'm going to be using the grey-green light for the Prismacolor, but just use whatever light green that you have. So we're just lightly adding a base colour there. Try not to sort of go in to the Ladybird. And of course what we'll do at the very end is we will balance all of the colours up and just make that Ladybird stand out a bit more. So very lightly. And then we're going to carry on with the Pablo light green, so maybe slightly depending on what you've got. I mean, for this one you could use the lightest grey you've got in your pencil set if you don't have any of those, and then for this part just use one of the lighter greens that you've got. And just looking at that reference photo and just building it up from the bottom. So the thing is, with these trading cards, they're like an ideal size where you can just complete a complete project in one sitting if you wanted to. And you can either keep them for yourself, gift them to people, or swap with other artists, so you've always got an original piece of art. Okay, and then I'm going to go with a slightly darker orange than the last one. This is a yellow green, so if you don't have the exact shades, just sort of go up gradually in your selection of greens that you have. Just like small light movements up and down like that. So it's basically you're just sliding the pencil over the surface, and then we're going to go in with the permanent green of the Polychromos. So again, that's a darker shade again, and it's kind of like darker along here. And this will actually make more sense once we've done the background as well. Just a bit down there as well. So when you sort of go as light as you can with the pressure, the more chance you've got of being able to add more colours to the layer. Just sharpening in another green. Okay, so this is the Luminance grass green. So again, this one's slightly darker again. Okay, and then I'm just going to come back in with the light green. And of course, with these artist trading cards, you don't need to sort of use colour pencils all the time. You can paint, you can use fine liners, you can use alcohol markers, charcoal, pastels, anything you know that you've got available that you want to use. Okay, so I'm going to use the grey-green light again, just to sort of add another layer up here. And I think what I'll do is I'll just lightly go over this just to sort of bring it down a notch or two. Okay, so we're going to work on this part underneath. So it's dark because of the ladybird's body and its shadow. So just this is the grass green. So just use your darkest layer, one of the darker greens you've got in your pencil set. And just basically do it on where the darker areas are coming through. And then I'm going to use the permanent green underneath. So this like represents like the tonal values. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work on this part of the grass, and you can see at the end it's pink. So I'm going to use the salmon pink. And to sort of bring the colour up brighter and richer, I'm just going same light pressure, but I'm just sort of colouring backwards and forwards over the top just to sort of bring it out a bit. And then I'm going to use the light green. So I'm just going to sort of just bring that out, just having this as our base colour. And just going to go up to the yellow green. So we've kind of like got that bit there where it sort of twists slightly, and then just bring in some like texture lines coming across and here. And this will show up a lot more as well once we've sort of done those darker areas in the background. But if you don't want to do a background, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so this is the grey-green light again. Just want to add a little bit of permanent green. Just to give it a little bit of texture, and I'm going to use the ash rose just to sort of bring a bit more of this pink down. Just very lightly. Okay. So we're going to go and work down here. So in the corner, I'm going to use the light aqua, so it's like a very sort of pale greeny kind of blue colour. So I'm just going to use that in the corner. Very, very lightly. And then I'm going to go over it with the luminance white. So you can use any white that you've got, just to sort of try and tone it down a bit. And then with the grass green, just going to move over here. So you can use these darker shaded areas where you can sort of see where your darker shades of pencil can go. And this is underneath that blade of grass that's coming across there. And then we've got slightly darker under here as well. Still the same pressure that we've been using. And I'm going to come in with the permanent green in this middle part. So we just want to lightly build those layers up, and then we're going to come in with that grass green again in a moment. So just light coverage there with the pencil. And then with that grass green, just going to lightly go over it. It's kind of like slightly darker there, and then it's coming out So it's always going to be darker where it's coming out underneath the grass above because it's got the shadow of it there. Going to come in with the light green because it's got a lighter part sort of just coming through there. And we're just sort of going over and just using this lighter green as another layer. I'm just going to go in again with that grass green just to sort of build up some of those areas, darker areas. And then just bringing it out from here. Just a bit more of the permanent green on there. Okay, so so we're going to move on to this part, and what we've got here is like a shadow of the grass there. And it kind of like goes a bit sort of under there, so we're not going to draw a firm line, we're just colouring it. And actually I'm just going to use the chartreuse, so it's like a yellowy green. I just want to sort of add some of that in there. Just put some over here as well. Okay, just going to sort of add in some of the grass green. I'm going to use the grey-green light on this part. Because although you probably can't see it on the screen, you'll be able to see this in front of you. So it sort of just goes through about there. And then do it going down there. You can go on top of that part. So the grass green again for some more layers and for some more boldness. going to add another layer on top with the white. You'll be able to sort of see this bit better once we've done this bit under here. So we kind of want that a bit out of focus. Now I've got a dark green that I'm going to be using in a moment. It's not on the list because it's going to be part of the background, and I wasn't originally going to do the background. So it's a dark green, so it would be like the darkest green that you have in your pencil set, and I've got deep cobalt green, so it's one that I sort of found just before, before I started, when I actually decided that I was going to, put in a background. Just going to go over that a bit more. It's a really lovely shade. Okay. So I'm going to start this one over here. So you have to go careful with this one, because I think what we're going to do is we're going to, so we've got that top of that blade there, and then about there. That's it. And so I'm going to lightly add this chartreuse. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. I'm just going to add this as the base layer. So we've got to stop around there. Doesn't matter if you bring up that green in there, because it's kind of like goes up there anyway. And then we've got a lighter part going in there. And then just go into this part here. Next we're going to use the yellow green. So we're lightly sort of building up those layers there. So remember, don't go into that space, we'll sort that out in a moment. So I'm like lifting my pencil each time we do add like the pencil strokes. We'll work on that bit in a minute, but don't sort of put your pencil in there at the moment, because it's going to be darker underneath. Let's go in with that chartreuse again. So again, I'm not sort of pressing particularly hard with it. And then I'm going to use the permanent green. And because we've used lighter colours underneath it, it's not as dark as it could be. So we just got nice sort of pencil strokes, adding sort of some grassy texture there. And I'm going to use the grass green to sort of bring in some of the darker areas. It doesn't need to be all across this part, we're just sort of adding bits. So down here we've got some darker areas. Just going to come in with that permanent green again. Just to sort of build that up, make it slightly darker in places. And then with that chartreuse, I'm just going to sort of bring it up into there a bit. And then down into there. Just going to sharpen the green-grey light, or the grey-green light. I'm just going to move that into that area. So it doesn't matter on this part if we bring in some of the surrounding greens. Because we do want to add a bit of the colour to it. And then the grass green, so it just sort of just comes up to there. Like that. And then we're going to use the yellow green down in this part here. So we're just building the darker parts up at the bottom. And we'll sort that bit out in a moment, but we'll just do this bottom part. And then we've got the permanent green. So you don't worry if your colours aren't the same as mine, because you might not have the same pencils as me, and that's absolutely fine. It's just the technique I'm teaching. So we're just going along there just to make that bottom area a bit darker. So the grass green underneath. light green. And so this part here, I'm just going to do it in some light green. And up to about here, it's, yeah, let's just do that part. I'm just going to add the moss green. So just like, I don't know, like a, going towards the brown end of the spectrum of the greens. I'll just bring that in down there as well. I want that bit there to sort of be more prominent. And this is the grey-green light. Okay, so we're gonna work on that bit. So see, that part is part of this. So this is the grey-green light. So again, you might not be able to see it, but you should be able to see it when you're using the lighter colour in front of you, and I can just about see this bit. So I'm going to go in with, it's going to need a darker green, the deep cobalt green, whatever darker green you've got, but just go very lightly with it. I'm just going to add a bit of the ultramarine violet, just very, very lightly with it, just to add a bit of a shadow to it. And then just up there as well. And because we've added the grey-green light, it's not going to really show up as like a deep purpley colour, but if you find that it does, then you can always go over it with a light colour again, which is what I'm going to do with this. Actually, let's try the light aqua. And then we'll just go in with the, excuse me, my voice keeps going, a bit of the white on the edge. So what we're going to do is we're now going to make a start on the background, and we'll just do this part first, and then that should bring us in to sort of balancing that up a bit. So I am going to use the moss green for this. Just going to take a drink, and we're going very light. And that round circular movement with the pencil, because it's going to help us to blend the colours a bit better. And now this doesn't matter if you sort of bring that into that bottom area of the grass, because we're balancing up the colours as it is anyway. So what we're doing here is we're just building up layers. Because what we want is the white of the paper, that tooth. We want to sort of close that up, but we don't want to press heavily with it. And then I'm just going to go in with the excuse me, I'm going to go in with the grass green for the moment, and then I'm going to go in with the cobalt green, dark cobalt green. Like I say, if you don't want to do a background, that's absolutely fine. But for those of you that sort of are interested, just thought I'd do this so it sort of completes the whole picture. Right, moss green again. So we just sort of keep going over it, same pressure, just to sort of close out that tooth, because there's a whiteness sort of coming through. And I'm just going to go in with that deep cobalt green, so whatever dark green that you have, and under that, so I'm just making sure that this area is quite dark. So you can probably see on the screen that I've still got the whiteness coming through there, which is exactly the sort of thing that we want to sort of be closing up. And then back in with that moss green. So what you could do as well is some white. You could very lightly sort of go over the top, and you can see it lightening, and then just go over that again, and that will close off some of the tooth as well. So the moss green again. And I can see some of that permanent green at the edge. So when you're doing round circular movements with your pencil, doing that round like I'm doing now, it blends the colour of the pigment colour, so it's a lot, you know, it's a lot smoother. And that moss green again. And then the deep green. And that's coming in across there. Okay, so what we're going to do next is where the areas are dark, I'm just going to go in with the grass green and I'm just going to sort of mark them out, but when you're doing that, go careful with the lighter areas. So just sort of take your time if you can. Especially around where you've got lighter colours, like on this part. So I'm just going to go across with this. So everywhere where you can see a shadow, just use a darkish green. Not the darkest green that you've got, but a darker green. And I'm kind of like using more of the side of my pencil because of the coverage and it's softer. And then along here as well. So mind you don't go into that ladybird. And just very, very careful around this part. And then there's a bit that sort of comes out this side. And then behind the ladybird, just around there, we are going to make that red stand out a bit more as well anyway. And then under there. So this is like mapping out the area. Just want to get that in as well. So it's got a slight sort of shadow on it. And then along there, doesn't sort of, yeah, it does go up like that. So it's looking a bit messy at the moment, but that's absolutely fine because now we're going to start blending in a moment with the other shades of green. Okay, so we're going to use that dark cobalt green, and we're just going to keep going with round movements with the pencil. And we're not sort of building up hard layers, we're using that same sort of pressure. We just want to make sure that we don't go into this area. And of course we've got the darker area here as well. So we're just going in layer by layer. And I'm just using that side of my pencil. I just want that to sort of be a bit darker. Still using round circular movement. I'm just gonna add some darker areas around here. Just go very, very gently with that. I keep wanting to call it a beetle, ladybird. It's just all about having patience. And then just under here, and then we've got slightly darker part down here as well. Okay, so gonna go in with the grass green. I want to sort of add in a bit of the permanent green around here as well, because we've got sort of different shades peeking through. So what we want is a lot of shade, but we also want that tooth. Well, not, you know, a lot of different shades of colour, but we also want that tooth filled in as well. Grass green. Doesn't need to sort of be perfect. We just want to make sure that it's got some out of focus background coming through it. And then just coming up there. I'm going to come in with the moss green. Because I want to bring in all these different kind of like shades in. Again, very careful when you go up against the ladybird. So just sort of filling in that layer. Just sort of building that up like that. And I can see, because of the tooth that's coming through, I can see that we've got more layers that we can add. So I'm going to go in with the permanent green. So we've kind of like want to bring it down from there as well. And it's a bit lighter at the bottom. I'm going to use the grey green light just around here. Just going to add that through over there. Go careful with the ladybird. I know I keep saying it, but it makes me feel better each time. Right, a bit there as well. Okay, so I'm going to use the bit of the light green. Finish that off in a minute. I just want to get around here sorted, because there's like loads of different sort of lighter shades coming through. So I'm just sort of building it up. And come in with that moss green. Like that. Some grass green, I think. So when we sort of build up on these layers that we're adding, it sort of starts to come in looking a lot smoother. Just want to sort of bring that out of there a bit. That deep cobalt green. So I'm adding it to all of the areas, but not as many layers, so that you can see that it's a bit lighter. Let's just see if I can get this to stand out a bit darker for you. Alright. Actually, that probably works a bit better. I'll try not to get any shadow on the paper. So it's kind of like all about having a bit of patience around this part. Let's add some of the yellow green. So it's got some lights in there as well. And then let's go back in with that moss green at the top there. I think that part's far too bright, so I will go over that at some point. And of course we'll go over that ladybird before we once we get to the end. And this bit needs tidying up as well, but that's fine. We'll just continue with this at the moment. A bit more of that dark cobalt green. I mean, if you want to add any other sort of shades of green in, by all means do that. That's absolutely fine. Let's just get some of that light green in. And a bit more of that moss green. I really like that colour actually, it's a nice shade. Let's just add some of that into that background to see what we can get from that. So just really watch that ladybird there. So we can just sort of build the colour up around the darker areas. And again, carefully around that ladybird. Right, and that cobalt green, let's just tidy that up a bit. I mean, if you wanted to with this as well, you could actually do it in pastel pencils. We'd just have to sort of go careful with the ladybird unless you did the background first. But yeah, because that's another option for you. I'm just creating that darker shadow. Actually, I want to do a bit more under here. Okay, let's do a bit permanent green. Just gonna where's that light aqua? I'm gonna go in with that to sort of see if I can just sort of burnish it a bit. So I also want this bit to be a bit smoother as well. So it's kind of like done it to some extent. Let's just go in a bit more with the deep cobalt blue, green. And just a little bit up there. And then just come down here slightly with the moss green. And grey green light. Let's just blend that slightly. Right, I'm going to use that bit to sort of go over. So you could really sort of keep going over and add in loads of different sort of shades and shapes. Let's go in with the moss green again because I quite like that one. Just gonna do that part and then sort of go in with a bit of white. And then, so up here is darker, so I'm going to go in with that dark cobalt green around the Ladybird, because it's actually sort of quite dark around here. And then just a bit in there as well. So I'm just sort of gonna fill in that space around there. I'm going to make that Ladybird stand out a bit more in a moment anyway. Okay. So a bit of white up here. And some moss green. Okay, that's that. Just want to add a bit more of that cobalt green. And then sort of coming up here. Actually, I can see a lot of the moss green around here as well. Like that. I think we've done the right thing, sort of adding in that background. Just a bit more of the dark cobalt green. So what you're seeing is possibly like the plant that it's actually perched on. So you're seeing everything up in the foreground, and then it's like this. These, I suppose, either bits of grass or bits of like plant leaf, and then you've got that stalk there that it's on, and then you've got the blurred background, which is a bit like the otter tutorial. So I'm just using the moss green for this bit. Just going to get that area done as well in a moment, and then I'm going to add some contrast there. So I'm going to use the cobalt green a bit in there. And it's going to come down here as well. So you've got the bottom part of the stem that it's on, or the blade of grass. So already it's like darker up the top, but you want to sort of make sure that you can still see that highlight in there. It's slightly darker here as well. So we're just going to come onto that very lightly. I think around here we might add some grass green in a moment. So this is the grass green. And that grey-green light, just to sort of blend that together. So we'd just go over the top of that ladybird. So let's just go with that scarlet. We're almost done. Just want to make her stand out. I'm saying her. Just a little bit in there. So we just want to make her stand out against that lush green background. I want to add some of the dark cadmium orange. And then just going over it around here, just to sort of give it that bright colour. The ash rose, sort of bring that in there. can see a bit of dark indigo sort of coming in around there slightly. So let's just, there we go. So that's it. That's the Ladybird art trading card done. So I hope you've enjoyed the process, and I'll see you in the next video.